Thank you, Gregor. How's everybody doing today? Excited to be at SolidusConf? Let me tell you, I am so excited to be here. Ever since my first SolidusConf, I've been waiting for another conference, and last year I didn't manage to make it to SolidusConf, and so I'm super excited to be here. First, a little bit about me. I love to snowboard. I don't know if we got any snowboarders here. Yeah. I also love to do yoga. This is actually balancing stick pose. This is down when I was in Nicaragua for a yoga retreat. And I also love to hike, but you don't have to choose one or the other. Hike and do yoga. I'm a big golfer. Any golfers here? Played at a private course down in Mexico this past time. Had the pleasure to go down 3 times this past year. It's been absolutely incredible. I'm finally learning Spanish. Of course, I don't remember my Spanish too well from high school, but it's coming back quickly. I also love to eat hot and spicy things. I recently did a wings challenge for 500,000 Scoville units. You have to eat 6 wings and you get a t-shirt. I'm also a super host on Airbnb. This is my place in upstate New York. You're all welcome to come visit. Email me. It's a big house. I'd love to host you. No charge. This is my orchid. I actually had this orchid back when I was at RailsDog, and it bloomed and then stopped blooming, and then I kept it alive for 2 years and finally got it to bloom again. So that was one of my goals. I really love plants. Also love to work out. I think that's really important. It's something that we emphasize at Magma too. We have yoga classes in the office each week, and it's really important at the end of the day that you do something to de-stress. Maybe you do it in the morning, but either way, you got to keep your body healthy. And lastly, family is very important to me. This is my niece, Thea Rose, and these are my 2 parents. They play in the Bloomfield Mandolin Orchestra, and believe it or not, recently got the Italian band in my great-grandfather's hometown to play this very old, 100-year-old piece of music after we reconnected with some cousins over there that had been lost for more than 100 years. So, my background and a little bit of what I've been up to. This is a picture of Shanghai, actually, which you might be wondering, do we have a client in Shanghai? No, we don't. I was in the furniture industry. That's the family business, doing sales, importing furniture from China, Malaysia, and Vietnam. I was working as a regional sales rep, selling wholesale to these furniture stores. And I entered the business at just the right time. I got a chance to go to Beijing and to Shanghai, which was absolutely awesome experience. So you're probably thinking I went to school for business. No, in fact, I went to school for engineering. And I ended up with a degree in chemistry. After that, I decided furniture, but that wasn't really my own. I needed something that was all my own. When I was in college, I had started a very small e-commerce site that was selling memory foam mattresses. And I thought, what better place than to get back into e-commerce? This is a very growing field, and that's why I feel so confident that we're all here working together, because this is the future. It's big box stores and it's the internet, and that's basically it. The independents, at least I can tell you from the furniture business, have mostly gone away. There'll always be some independents, but we're in the midst of a trend here. And so I put the 2 together. I started building a spree site for one of the furniture stores that I knew the owner of, and before you knew it, it was 2014 in New York City and SolidusConf was happening. And that's where I went and met RailsDog. I connected with Dan Honig and started working with them. And before long, I was named the VP of Client Services or VP of Project Management, whatever you want to call it. Our titles were rather flexible. But within a year or so, maybe more, things fell apart. And I managed to hook up with Magma and with Solidus instead of Spree. And I was really excited about that because I felt like Solidus really was on the cutting edge. And really excited also to be at a company that had more employees and felt more established. And I can tell you, coming from RailsDog and working with some very talented developers in the community, like Brian Knapp and Eric Anderson, these people that I really respected when I was at RailsDog, Dan Pritchett, a bunch of people. Coming to Magma, I met other developers in another country that were just as good, and it really opened my eyes even more to the fact that it doesn't matter where you live, it matters who you are and how hard you work and what you can do. So a little bit about Magma Labs. Magma Labs is a software development consultancy based primarily in Mexico. We have our main office in Colima. It's about 2/3 of the way south in the country, half an hour from the West Coast. we do a whole bunch of different work, but our specialty is absolutely Spree and Solidus. We really love working in the ecosystem, and we're making a commitment to contribute back even more from this point forward. I lobbied really hard with Magma to make sure that we were here as the platinum sponsor because I thought it was really important for us to come together as a community. And we were running so many sites on Spree and Solidus, why not take that position? So this is another picture of me hiking, which you might wonder why it's in here. This is actually SolidusConf 2016, but for me, because I was in Denver at the time. And just shortly after that, I helped to co-host Open Commerce Conf. You might recognize Mike Faber with his back to me. Those are the guys that manage 3.0 from Spark Solutions. Vince Hall was also there. But the best part of it was going out afterwards and meeting the guys from Stembolt, going out with Clark, going out with Sean, Brian, Anthony, Ali was there, the guys from GoDaddy were there too. We had a really great time. We got to connect on a personal level, and that's really what got me excited for this conference. After that, fast forward a few more months, I found myself in Toronto at DX3. I think this is really important to show because I really believe that AR and VR are something that's going to be coming to commerce right now, already coming, and I have a little bit more on that later. And also as a nod to Gregor, who's from Toronto. This picture of the beach, this is MagmaConf. And actually, I want to take this opportunity to thank Susan and the organizers of this conference because we know just how hard it is to organize a conference. It's a lot of work. Let's all give Susan a round of applause. So we went down and had a conference on the beach. Not all of it was on the beach. There was a stage not on the beach. And yes, we had a mariachi band and some traditional Mexican dancers. It was really a lot of fun. This is a shot of us outside having dinner. Everybody's taking pictures of the sky. It was absolutely gorgeous. And that brings us to London. This is a picture I took when I was walking to the speaker dinner. It's absolutely gorgeous, walking along this little wharf. If you haven't had a chance to walk across the Tower Bridge, you should. Check it out. It's amazing. It looks great from this side, too. It looks even better on the bridge or from that little wharf than the other way. On Monday, we went out for some fish and chips and sat under the bridge in the shade. Absolutely fantastic. And that night, I thought I saw a werewolf, but it turned out it was a fox. I didn't know there were foxes in London. I thought it was an urban environment, but apparently, yes, there are foxes. No werewolves seen to date. And so finally, that brings us to Athlete Originals. I think the best way I can do justice to this is actually to read this description here, which says, the Athlete Originals marketplace features original designs and authentic products from your favorite athletes. In many cases, the athletes themselves are the artists. At other times, the athletes collaborate with artists and graphic designers to turn their creative ideas into original art. The artwork is then used to create unique products from the athletes, by athletes for the fans. And here I have a little video for you that we have on our website. This is one of the athletes, Micah Johnson, actually drawing his design that we're selling on the site. The idea here is to connect as closely as possible between the athletes and the fans themselves. So you're not just buying merchandise from a company. You feel really like you're buying it from the athlete. So he's finishing up the drawing right now. So these are a few screenshots of the website. I figured I'd be remiss if I didn't at least put it in here. We did a design that was by the Baymard Institute, so it's optimized for UI and UX. And we're really happy with how it came out. Actually, at the end of it, we redid the header to make it a little bit more forward. This is the Shop by Sport page, one of our category pages. The whole site is fully responsive. No matter what device you're on, it should look good. Next is inspiration. And you've really got to check out the site and read some of these bios. They're very inspiring. And I'm just going to share one with you right now before we get into the rest of the talk. And that's from Derek Coleman. This is an NFL player who, believe it or not, despite the fact that he was deaf, became an NFL player. He's the only player ever to do this and has overcome enormous adversity in order to reach his goal. And his quote is, "They told me I couldn't do it. I couldn't live my dream, but I've been deaf since I was 3, so I didn't listen." So what were our project goals here? When we took on the project, the #1 goal was to do a replatform. They were running in Magento, and they wanted something more shiny, and that was Solidus. It was also to implement on-demand production with multiple manufacturers. They were already doing on-demand production, but just with one manufacturer and in not a very nice way. And also, of course, to integrate with the Amazon marketplace. Easy, right? Well, brick wall. Estimates are hard. And they're not just a little hard, they're very hard. I think they're the hardest part of this business to get right. So the original estimate was a 3 to 4 month project, maybe 5 months. We quickly realized we had to readjust. I mean, we weren't running any kind of waterfall model. We were doing agile, but we all know clients have budgets and they want some kind of estimate when you start, and oftentimes you deviate quickly. But we kept an honest, open communication channel with the client and adjusted our plan according to the data that we had. That meant revising it to an August launch. 8-month project, but by September it was clear the August launch had already passed and we shouldn't be launching during Q4 and we needed to wait until the next year. Sound familiar? Eventually we launched successfully in February, and to this day we've been having a really great response to the website. So what were some of our challenges? The first challenge and why we had these delays was resource turnover. You never know when you're going to lose somebody. It's always hard for the project. But believe it or not, after I came onto the Athlete Originals project in the very beginning of February of last year, all of the team that was on the project within 3 or 4 months had left, and we had been replaced with new developers. Now, these new developers are some of the best people I ever worked with. Jonathan's sitting right here. He's amazing. But that doesn't change the fact that the core team of the people working on the project had left, and we needed to pick up the pieces. We needed to do whatever knowledge transfer we could, get everybody else back up to speed, and move forward. There was also very strict requirements from the Baymard Institute. Of course, I'm glossing over the unexpected complexity of the manufacturer APIs. I'll go into that much more later. But these strict requirements were a big deal for us. Working in kind of an agile methodology, we tried to build something that was akin to an MVP, or maybe just not everything that was in the original spec, because it didn't really match up exactly with Solidus. But by the time we had a working site and we're presenting it, and Baymard Institute was given the site to give feedback, it was very clear that the design elements that they had added, we needed to implement in order to launch the site. Now, if we could go back in time, maybe the right choice would have actually been to push back against the client harder and to have launched right then, which meant we could have launched before the Q4 fall season when they get the majority of their sales. But that's not the decision that we took, and the client was very adamant that he wanted everything in there just like it was in the designs. We also had some difficulties with the Amazon marketplace. It is not an easy integration. There's a lot of touch points and a lot of things you got to be careful of. And then there's this whole other thing, the AOMVP reporting application, which is a separate Rails app that the athletes and the agents use to track their sales. And we needed to do a whole upgrade on that too. That was almost non-existent from the very original estimate. So we needed to estimate that work, make a good plan for it, and build it out. This is what calculates our royalties, which is probably the hardest part of the app that we needed to change. You all know the difficulties that we have with order adjustments. So let's talk about on-demand manufacturing. Pretty simple. Product importer, creator, order pusher, order syncer. It's not really that different than shipping normally. Easy, right? Well, another brick wall. Estimates are hard. Did I mention this already? So we thought that we were ready. Then we realized there was something called print type. So these shirts that we're wearing today, these are printed with flex printing. And most of the products on the site actually are printed with digital direct printing, which is probably the most common. And then there's a whole other type of printing called flock printing. Well, we didn't realize this at the beginning. We didn't think that there were multiple print types, and so all of a sudden we needed to add in print types. When we had just about completed that, all of a sudden we realized that our assumption that the designs remained the same color was also wrong. Sometimes the designs within this API changed colors, specifically if they were SVG file and it was configured in such a way like that. Again, most of our designs were PNG files and didn't change color, so it seemed a reasonable assumption at the beginning when we were working with it. But at the end, when we were doing our QA, we realized that this was a big issue. Especially it was a big issue because of the color on color issue that we encountered. Basically, our product importer creator doesn't create, within the manufacturer, all the products are not created. There's only one product created in one color. And in our system, we iterate over all the possible choices of color and combinations and make those products in our system to offer the customer the most choices and the best value. Unfortunately, what happens is if you have a design that's white and a shirt that's white and you pair those up, that doesn't look very good. So we initially were assuming that we could handle this by setting little labels and tags on each design with a specific hex color that they were in. Well, it turned out sometimes they changed colors and those labels didn't matter. In addition to that, we had a big problem with data validation, really just data hell. The data that we were getting from the API turned out not to be consistent, and over again, we had to figure out new ways to validate the data and make sure that what we were taking into our system worked with our products. And this, by the way, was an even bigger problem when we started working with the Amazon Marketplace integration. Which brings us to the Amazon Marketplace integration. So why should you care about this? I'm sure a lot of you aren't selling on Amazon or have no intention of selling on Amazon or feel like you're competing with yourself and you're going to just steal your own sales. But you really should care. This is another source of revenue for your business. You can get increased sales and you can get increased product discovery. And you can acquire new customers and leverage Amazon's huge customer base, huge amount of traffic. You might be a small store, you might be a large store, no matter what, your product's going to be available to more people and seen by more eyeballs, resulting in more conversions. Whatever your conversion percentage is, multiply that times some more people, you're going to get some more money. And of course, you're going to get some better brand exposure. Which brings us to 1P versus 3P. I don't know if you're familiar with this concept. No, that's 3P versus 1P. 1P is vendor central. This is essentially wholesaling your merchandise to Amazon. So you're shipping all of your Amazon over there, all of your merchandise over to Amazon, and they are selling it for you. They are setting the price, they're doing the advertising, they're doing the customer support for you, and there are advantages to working in this way. But there are also disadvantages. In my mind, the number one is the lower margins because of the price. So Amazon promises that they'll adhere to your MAP pricing, but unfortunately, as long as anybody else lists your product for a lower price, even just one other lister, price match kicks in, and all of a sudden your price drops way down. And that's a big problem, especially if you're selling on your own individual site alongside it. So that brings us to the other option that we have, 3P. This is seller central instead of vendor central. And so you can sell your own brand merchandise on Amazon, but you're not doing it by shipping all of the merchandise to Amazon and then letting them handle everything. You're taking control yourself. If you do this as fulfilled by Amazon, which you can do, sometimes they call that 2P, but it doesn't need to be fulfilled by Amazon. You can do this fulfilling through your own distribution center. And here you have total price control. You set your price and it will not change. And this results in higher margins, of course, and faster payments. You get a better payment from Amazon if you're a 3P as opposed to a 1P. There's not so much of this net 30-day terms or things like that. So what were some of our challenges here? I think the biggest challenge is right here at the top. It was the request throttling. You can't just send Amazon everything that you want to update, export, and categorize. You need to do it within a very strict limit. And if you don't do it with that limit, sorry, your quota has been met for that hour. You can no longer do any more feed submission. Not only that, but once the feeds are submitted, if you successfully submit them, it takes a long time for them to process these feeds. It's not something where you're uploading a file and then there it is. Amazon's putting this in a queue and taking time to process. Another one of the big challenges, and probably the biggest challenge for any store that wanted to implement this, is creating a mapping between the Amazon product categories and your own products. There's a very specific Amazon product category for each individual product type. And within your system, you might have X, Y, and Z, while Amazon has something completely different, much more complex, generally speaking. The next thing that we needed to deal with was the data validation. Amazon is super strict. If you submit these product feeds and they have even one bullet point missing, sorry, that's it. It doesn't work. So again, tying this back to the API from our manufacturer and the data that we're getting from them, and then submitting through Amazon, the description specifically, this was a big deal because that data was not consistent and we needed to format it ourselves to make sure that Amazon would accept it. Even when we got to the point where we could import all the products into our system and we felt confident in our product importer creator from a manufacturer, when we went to export to Amazon, we had to do further curation of the data. And finally, the performance standards. And this goes across pretty much every sector that you can think of in e-commerce. But Amazon is very strict. You need to ship on time, you need to ship with a valid tracking number, and basically everything else you can imagine. Respond within 24 hours to customers' requests. All those things that we think of as good practice, Amazon strictly enforces. So we eventually launched to Amazon, and we're very happy with that. But what is the future of our project? It's certainly not just these manufacturers that we've already done and Amazon. We want to take it to the next level and think of what really could be inspirational. So first off, and we were all talking about this is a big credit to the core team. We recently completed the 1.4 upgrade, and we already have a PR open for the 2.0 upgrade. This was so easy compared to the upgrades in Spree, I can't even tell you. And I think they all deserve a big round of applause for their work on this. The next thing that we want to focus on after taking care of that technical debt, so to speak, is additional sales channels, multi-tenancy, and white labeling. We'd like to be working with a single-page application that's on a totally separate site and be able to interact with that so that they can use our application as a hub for all of these orders and different manufacturers. Which brings us to the final point, which is adding additional manufacturers. Right now, we're very excited to say that we've just finally shipped some test orders for these embroidered hats, which is our brand new manufacturer. This is a very popular item, especially with athletes. And this is now our third manufacturer. So this brings us to the open sourcing plans. What are those? First off, MailChimp, subscriptions and abandoned cart emails. We took such a long time to implement this thing. It was a pain in the neck. Especially the product sync really just didn't work. We had to sync up all of our products, hundreds of thousands of products into MailChimp. And so we needed to massage that and massage and massage that. Finally, we got it working. But this is a part of the application that we feel like is really valuable and that if there's community support for, we can open source. Likewise, we did a whole big thing about in-email reviews. Previously in the Magento site, there was a Yotpo integration. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Yotpo, but it's a third-party review system. And we decided that we were going to do it with Spree reviews, which became Solidus reviews. But one of the most important features to the client was that the customer was able to submit reviews inside the email. They didn't have to first visit the site. Now, it does redirect you to the site to submit the review itself, but we feel really happy with this. We feel like it's something that not enough people are focusing on, and that if you don't have reviews on your site, you're missing out. You need that user-generated content there. Another thing is wish lists. Might sound trivial to some of you, but it's a good feature, and it's something that we implemented for the project and that we could hand out as open source code. We also have a feature where you can email your wish list to whoever you want. Hopefully they buy you the item. And this is an opportunity for me to ask the community and all of you what else you want to see. If you take a look at the website and you see a feature that you love, ask us about it. We want to contribute back to the community. We know that over the last year, we've not contributed as much as we wanted to. And we want to take this conference as an opportunity to repledge our devotion to doing that and to open sourcing. If we can get involved together, I think that we can do that much more. And especially here is the Amazon Marketplace integration. This is something that I would assume a lot of you want, but maybe you don't feel that way. It's a lot of work to maintain a gem, as you all know, so we want to make sure that we're acting in alignment with what the community really wants, what the community really deserves. So please, I encourage you, send me an email, send anybody at Magma an email, and let's talk about it. There's a few other things that aren't specifically related to Athlete Originals, but we've been thinking about in terms of Solidus and open sourcing. And I want to take you through those things now. The first one is the Facebook chatbot. We feel like one of the futures of e-commerce is in conversational commerce, and that it would be great if you had that same kind of experience that you have in store with someone online. Now, this is already happening in certain places, but there's no Solidus extension to just plug in and do this. We think that this would be a huge win. Another feature that we really want to release as some kind of extension is a address suggester and validator. We feel like there's a little bit of a hole here, and that we have a good solution that we can open source and provide a lot of value to existing sites almost immediately. We're talking about even stuff like inserting the +4 zip code, which a lot of people don't know even of their home address, even if you give them the option to enter it. And finally, as I mentioned a little earlier in the talk, is the product AR viewer. So we've been working on this for a while now, and we'd really like you to be able to visualize products within your own home. Whether that's a piece of furniture, a t-shirt, or anything else, we'd like you to be able to interact with it in a way that feels more real to you. And I have to say, that picture that you saw of me, I don't know how many of you tried good VR before. I was blown away at DX3. I had not tried it before. I put that on. I felt like it was another world. There's someone standing right there next to me talking. You turn your head a little bit. They're not there. You're inside VR. And if we can take that and put it into e-commerce, it's going to drive conversions all day. So next, I'd like to bring up the community gift. Now, this was actually already presented in the ad that's in your brochures, but I wanted to make sure that everybody saw it. I talked to Athlete Originals. They want to contribute back. They said that we have $15 off for any order of $30 or more. $30 is going to be enough to get you most products on the website. So basically, it's a 50% off if you want to order a product from any of those different athletes. Hopefully, there's one on there that you like. We're adding more athletes every day and more supporter shops. You can also check out at the bottom of the web page, there's an area, like I said, supporter shops, which aren't specifically for athletes, but more for organizations. So please check that out when you get a chance and give us some feedback on our work and maybe make a comment about what you'd like to see open sourced. Finally, I'd like to talk about the case for a stronger Solidus community. And I added this part to the talk because in part of what Clark said during his opening remarks, I think it's really important that we come together as a community. I think that there hasn't been enough collaboration in the past, and that's because there was a transition happening. But that transition is over at this point. There's, of course, still support for the Sprig community, and I wish those guys well. But I'd love to bring that community and this community together in whatever way we can and erase any kind of animosity we have. But even more importantly, I'd like to bring everybody in this room and everybody that sees these videos together to contribute to the open source project. Think about how much we got done in just 2 days of working together on this. Everybody's putting their head down all the time on their client work. Sometimes you got to pick your head up. And so this is in part something that Clark had mentioned when we were walking back from the SpeakerConf, the regional SolidusConfs, or meetings more than once a year. But I'm hugely in favor of that. I would absolutely love to do that in New York City, but it could be anywhere. Salt Lake City, LA, Berlin, around the world, Japan. We could do this all year, all the time, not every day, but not once a year either, right? And that builds into the next thing that Alarm Grid actually mentioned, which is virtual hack days. We don't even have to be in the same place. We can just pick a Saturday, 4 hours, all decide to sign on, put our video on or not, no call or yes, and do some hacking and solve some of these issues. Think about how successful it was to add that Solidus Hack Day label to the issues and how much that got them closed out. This is increased collaboration, it's an opportunity to look up, and it's an opportunity to give back and continue learning. We're not just about taking the knowledge that we know and applying it, but digging in. And sometimes you can't do that in your client work. And here, this is an opportunity for that. But out of all of this, I think the most important point is that second one from the bottom, reduce redundant work. Our stores, our agencies, a lot of times they're working on the exact same thing. Even within a single company, you know that that happens. But across all of the people using Solidus, it happens even more. So through this collaboration, through more regional Solidus comps or virtual hack days or whatever Stemble and Solidus would be into doing, we can collaborate together in a way that we haven't before, maybe for several years. And the partner program that Clark mentioned, I love that. That is awesome. We absolutely need that. And I'm really encouraged by it because it means to me that it's not just about getting together and solving bugs or building features. It's about building a community that is sustainable because honestly, there's enough work for everybody. I mean, think about the fact that we have, what, 2% of the market, more or less? and Magento has 40%, there is a huge opportunity for growth. If we can come together as a community and partner in such a way that we can build something stronger and better, we're all going to be sitting pretty. So that concludes my talk. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, please ask. We're hiring right now. We need developers. If you need a job, get in touch. I don't doubt that that's the case for anybody in this room. But most importantly, we have some really nice swag back there. It's been sitting on the table for the whole conference so far. We're ready to give it out finally because it's over. So come back and see us, say hi, get to know us a little bit, and take some sweet swag home. Thank you very much. Clark.
Did the re-platform include importing all the old Magento data?
Some of it. So we didn't import the products. The products actually were created brand new. But we did need to import the bios from the athletes and also image assets. One of the hidden requirements here was actually editing these images to make them perfect and just right so they really looked awesome. That took us a long time. We thought that we had it, and we thought that we had it again, and we had to keep going back until we had something that we felt like really represented the high profile of some of these people. LeGarrette Blount just won the Super Bowl this year with the Patriots. He deserves to really have an image that's showing him in a nice light. And I'd say with the data transfer, that was our biggest thing. Luckily, we did not have to take over old orders into our system. We did need to do that into our reporting application, and we needed to build a switch that basically could switch between the legacy data and the new data. But we didn't have to import the orders into our new system, which is a big win, or the products, or the users. Go ahead.
First, could you remember to repeat the
Oh, yeah, absolutely. His question was there any data transfer that needed to be done from the old application to the new one?
Second is that when you're running, I saw that your average heart rate was 177, which means you like to go, right?
Yeah, what I like to do is interval training. So I actually only grab onto the handles right after my interval's done to like check what I was at. So it looks like maybe I'm really out of shape, but actually I'm like incline walking most of the time, and then I'm doing like a sprint, and then putting it back on walk and checking my heart rate, and so it goes right up there. I thought someone might see that.
Tell me about working with Baymard.
Yeah, so working with Baymard was great. We had a really good experience. That's what the question was on. How was it working with Baymard? We feel like it was hard implementing the designs that they gave us because they weren't focused on Solidus whatsoever. And if there's one comment I would have, it's that really UX and UI needs to be more paired with what we do in Solidus so that we're already using a lot of those best practices. These are fairly established things across the industry, and we could be doing that. We could be reducing the steps in checkout, reducing the fields that we need to enter. There's various different ways that everybody's taking care of this. But that was our biggest challenge working with Baymard.
And you said they gave you design.
Yes. So Baymard did the original designs, the UX and the UI for the project. So they had done an audit of the legacy site, and then the client worked with Baymard in order to create new designs for the new site. And then we worked with those designs to create the Solidus application. But that was done before we started any development at all. And we had to do subsequent design to fill in the missing pieces. Martin.
What was the main reason for your client to decide to move away from Magento?
The question was, what was the main reason the client decided to move away from Magento? I think the number one reason is because the perception of Magento in the marketplace is that it is not the forward, awesome platform that it can be. They moved at the recommendation of Magma, and at the recommendation that the Solidus community is going to be growing in the way that I was just talking about, that we're all going to be coming together. Sure, Magento is great, but they're also moving towards having everybody on enterprise. And I think that that model is actually taking away from the open source aspect of the project. I'm sure there'll still always be a really strong open source community. But we do some Magento work and recently had a very tough situation with a client implementing a Magento 2.0 site with developers that were very senior at Magento 1.9. But the jump was so different that it was really tough. And when we went to Magento and asked them about it, they said, well, we recommend that you use enterprise. So I think the number one reason is that if you're going to go with Magento, you probably should be on enterprise. And if you're going to go with Solidus, that's your open source option. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Thomas Sample. I assume that he was named after an RSpec example at some point. It's like let user equal Thomas Sample. But yeah, that's your real name, right?
That's my real name.
It's amazing. We're just going to do a quick little switch over. If Thomas, you get into the back, give Clark your microphone. Clark's going to come up here.
And thanks once again to Stemble for organizing this. This is awesome.